knew that was not human. What we saw tonight was not human. So the next morning when I got up, Ivy and Paul had already gotten up and gone to the restaurant to have breakfast. And when I went over there, they're sitting at the table with a bunch of people around talking to them. So I figured they're telling them what happened to us last night. No. Ivy and Paul were talking about the alien that came in the motel last night. An alien came in the motel. I was sleeping. I slept through it. And it happened to Paul. It was in his room. It came to him, not me, and not to Ivy and me. It came in Paul's room. And there's a video out there that Anthony held a video. Anthony was up at Area 51 one time later on, a few years later, and Paul and I happened to be up there also, and we were telling Anthony about it, so he wanted to videotape the interview. And it's called Alien 51. It's a video put out by Anthony Hilder called Alien 51. And in there is Paul Tice and myself at Area 51 telling the same experience. So you'll hear Paul tell it himself. The alien came into Paul's bedroom. Paul said he fell asleep. He was sound asleep. And all of a sudden, a light came on over his head, woke him up. And it was a light green light. And he said, very light. It wasn't very bright at all, but just enough to woke him up. And it was a light green light. And he said he looked up, and it was an alien's face with the big eyes, the normal alien-looking face. But you could see through it. It was a hologram. You could see through the face to the ceiling. And he said then the hologram went down the ceiling and hit the wall and came down till it was even with him sitting in bed. And the aliens was now even with him telepathically. Ask Paul, what are you doing here? Who are you and what are you doing here? And Paul says, I could understand it well. I knew exactly what he had asked. And I'm trying to think the answer rather than speak the answer. I'm thinking the answer. And he said, when I started to answer him, he said, all of a sudden that thing went through his memory track. He said, everything that ever happened to me in my life I saw in an instant. Everything. He said, it was able to download my psyche and my brain to see everything I'd ever done. And he said, I knew I had no control over it. I was just seeing everything in my life going by. And he said, then this alien told me, telepathically said, you're okay, you're all right. And he said, and then it went through the wall. But the other thing he said, while it was talking to him, the room was moving. He said, I could see the door going past the alien. I could see the window going past the alien and the door coming back around. And he says, in my mind, I was seeing the wall circulating, but it was staying where it was and not moving. And he said, when the alien told me, you're all right, you're okay, it backed out and went backwards and went through the wall. Well, Ivy said that she was laying on her left side looking into his room, and she said when she woke up, something woke her up, and she saw this glowing green color on his wall. And the moment she woke up and saw that, she said a small, tiny pin light, a red little light, came through Paul's room and zipped in and came right over the top of her. And she was paralyzed. She said, I couldn't move, I couldn't scream, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't move. This little red thing was sitting over the top of me. And she said, then I saw the light go. It went. That little red light shot back out and followed it, and it was gone. And she said, so I got up and went in there and sat with Paul. She said, you were sound asleep. And she said, and so Paul said that this thing had told him, you're okay, you're all right, and it left. And so I'm listening to this, and I said, I didn't see anything. And when I said that, Pat Travis, the owner of the restaurant, she's very knowledgeable about UFO stuff. And Pat said to me, she said, no, they know who you are. They were just playing with your friends. They just play this way. Sometimes they'll do this to people just to just to scare them. They were playing with your friends. But they know who you are, and they're not playing with you. And so I thought, wow, to have her say something like that. And so, but that's exactly what, the old man had said. So a couple of days later, we left, and I drove Ivy back to the airport in LA. She went back to Hawaii, and Paul and I were living in San Diego, so we drove back. And I was working for a company called Truth Seeker Company in San Diego, and Paul was my publisher. And so this all happened on the first week of December of '94. December of '94 is when I had this whole experience out there in the desert with these 7 UFOs and the alien coming into Paul's room. And so the late spring of '95, I was working in San Diego, as I said. I rented a Chrysler convertible, and I told no one where I was going. And I drove back up to Area 51 by myself. I didn't tell Paul, told no one, even the people I'm working with. I just took off and went, and I rented a Chrysler convertible, and I drove up there, and I wanted to go back to where I'd had the experience. For some reason, I just wanted to go back. And so I got there, and that afternoon, about 4 o'clock, I drove out north, 19 miles, found the road, and drove back out on the same road. I wasn't going to stay out there when the sun goes down, when it gets dark. I did want to go out there after the sun goes down, but when it gets dark, I'm not staying out there. And so I sat on the back of my car with my feet in the back seat, and I talked with them. And I said, look, I know you're here, and I know you can hear me. And I also know that you don't have any, you don't wish to harm me, and I know that. If you did, I wouldn't be here. So I know that you don't want to harm me. I want you to understand that I'm willing to do whatever it is I'm supposed to do with my life. If this is some kind of a spiritual experience I'm having, I want you to know that I'm willing to do whatever I'm supposed to do. But I have 2 favors I wish to ask of you. 2 things I would ask you. 1, don't take me anywhere. I don't want to be abducted. I don't want to go anywhere. Just leave me alone. And 2, don't frighten me in my bedroom. I don't want to wake up and be frightened in my bedroom. I got a bad heart, been through too much. Just leave me alone and don't take me anywhere. Show me what I'm supposed to do. Tell me what I got to do, and I'm happy to do. Don't take me anywhere or frighten me in my bedroom. And I said, thank you, goodbye, and good luck. And I got in my car, turned around, and went back and spent a couple of nights with Joe and Pat. And then I drove back to San Diego, never told anyone. About 3 or 4 weeks later, Paul Tice calls me and says there's a young lady he heard about down on Coronado Island in San Diego. Coronado, a little island off the coast, and take a big bridge going over to it. And he said that she's a past life regressionist. And he said, I heard she's really great. Why don't you make an appointment with her and go see if she's that good? And if she is, then I'll go. And I said, no, if you want to see her, why don't you make the appointment? No, he said, you're much closer to her. You're very close. So you go see her. I said, okay. So I made an appointment. Her name was Karen, K-I-R-I-N, Karen. Karen was a beautiful young girl, but mystical about her. And so I drove over, I made the appointment, I go in, and so she has you take the watch off and your ring off and any metal, and I'm laying on a table like a massage table, and she's lighting candles around me and talking to someone. I thought maybe she's talking to somebody in the kitchen or something. She's talking and lighting candles, and I'm just laying there, and after a few minutes of her talking, and it finally occurred to me, there's nobody in the house but her and I. And so I asked her, I said, Karen, who are you talking to? And she said, oh, I'm sorry. She said, I'm talking to your friends who brought you here. And I said, what do you mean brought me here? Brought me to your house? She said, no. Who brought you to the earth? You've been brought here to do something. They brought you, and I'm talking to your friends that brought you here. And I said, well, since you seem to be on good terms with my friends, why don't you ask them, what the hell am I doing here? Who are my friends? And she says, well, she said, you don't know who brought you here? And I said, no, why would I be asking you? I don't even know what you're talking about. She said, well, they're saying they're Pleiadians. I don't know, but that's what they're telling me. And they're saying that you're from the Pleiades, and they have brought you here to do something, that they have something for you to do. And I said, wow. So I said, well, while you're talking to them, ask them, what is it I'm supposed to be doing here? And she said, they're telling me to tell you, first of all, that you don't, because she's a past life regressionist. She said, they're telling me to tell you, you don't need a past life regression. You need to get this life straight. Don't worry about your past ones. Get this one right. And then she said, and they're telling me that you are brought here to be a channel. They're going to channel messages through you, but not for a long time yet, not now. But ultimately, that's what they're going to do, is they're going to use you as a channel. And they're going to put you into a position where you will be heard by important people. And when that time comes, they will speak through you. And she said, but they're telling me to remind you, you are not an ambassador, you are an emissary. An ambassador speaks for the government he represents. You do not speak for anyone. An emissary merely delivers a message. You're not speaking for anyone. And they're telling me to tell you, to make sure you understand that. So that you're an emissary, not an ambassador. And you will be able to just deliver the message, and the message will come from them, through you. But not now. There will come a time when you will be speaking before important people, and the people who are supposed to know will know who you are. You don't know, but they will know. And when they're listening to you, they will know who you really are. And so she says, so they're telling me to tell you, just get this one right. And then she starts laughing. And I said, what are you laughing about? And she said, they just told me something funny about you. She said, they told me about 4 or 5 weeks ago, you rented a Chrysler convertible and you drove up there and went out on the same road that they saw you the last time, and you didn't want to go out there at night because you were scared, but you went out in the afternoon and you sat with your feet in the back seat. And I was thinking, I never told anyone this. She was exactly right. And she said, and you sat with your feet in the back seat and you said to them that you didn't mind doing what you're supposed to do, but you didn't want to be frightened in your bedroom or abducted. And they thought that was funny. They got a laugh out of that one. And I said, why would they think that's funny? And she said, because if you knew where you have come from and what you look like where you came from, as opposed to what you look like now as a human, you think you would be scared. Wait till you die and go back to where you come from. That's really going to be a shock to you. And she said, so they just thought that was humorous. You don't want to be frightened? Wait till you die. You've got a real trip coming when you go back to who you really were and where you've come from. And she said, but they're telling me to tell you, no one's going to harm you. We've given you something to do, and we have been watching you from day one. And so just remember, we're watching you, and you will do whatever it is we have in mind for you to do. And I thought, wow, man, I've never heard such stuff in my life. It's an incredible story.